3 of the Montesilvano Chess Open happening in Italy at the moment. Today we will have two matches again. Zach and Kostya are both playing, and the game should start any second now. I think in about 2 minutes we will already be able to see the first moves. So that's very good news. I'm very excited for today. I'm really looking forward to the games, especially to the game of Zach, because Zach is playing. Yesterday he played a young player, but today he's playing someone who is way younger. So his opponent today is born in 2014, so he's 10 years old. So that's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Right now we can't see him on the board yet, but he will join shortly. And then the games are about to start. Let's see, are we live on... Wait, let me check. Oh yes, we are live.
Von 1 und 1. Alle Handys zu Sparpreisen. Wie das Redmi Note 13 Pro.
Okay. Yes, but we are live indeed. So chat, welcome. Now I can see you. Nice. Yes, I just have to figure this out. Okay, let me do this again. I have to see the chat for 3 different channels at the same time, and that's not very easy to do, because I have a lot of stuff open at once. Okay, but now it should... Yes, now it's good. So, now I can see you. Yes, hello everyone. I still have my hair, yes. Because of 2 reasons. First of all, I didn't agree to the bet, and second of all, Zach played a draw. So even if I would have agreed, it would have been fine anyway. Would have been fine. Oh, and we see Zach's opponent arriving at the board. And look at him, he's so young, but he's very strong. As you can see. Can you see that? Oh, I actually have to change the background. I will do that real quick. So chat, take a look at this background, and then I will go ahead and slightly change it. And then you'll tell me what you prefer. And the first move has happened. And it looks like Kostya's opponent, Yanis Vanier, lost on time, but that did not happen. I can guarantee you that. But it looks like it at least. Okay. So for Zach's board, we don't have the clock. Interesting. Let me refresh. No, so there's no clock for Zach. Oh, I'm sorry. Now the board is gone. Okay, so yeah, I will just quickly go ahead and change the background just so you can see the... yes, now... Okay, I will change the background in just a second. But right now we will go ahead and start with the games. So Zach played e4 and his opponent did not reply yet. And oh no, Zach's opponent played e4, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, so now we can really start. So Ivan Kukushkin, Zach's opponent, played e4, and Zach is not at the board yet. But meanwhile we have the Caro-Kann opening. on Kostya's board, and he played this interesting variation with this d3 move. You can play a lot of systems against the Caro-Kann, and I played myself. So yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do against the Caro-Kann. So there are like 15, maybe even 20 different moves that you can play. And this d3 variation, at first it looks like black can just take and then trade the queen. And this, at least on first sight, it looks like black is just completely fine and the king is a little bit misplaced. It's not able to castle anymore. But as you say in chat, d3 is often played by super GMs, and there are a lot of small details here, and white has many different ideas. White will go for c3 and put the king on c2, and then white has a lot of different setups for the pieces, and a knight could land on c4, for example. The pawn can advance, so there are a lot of different approaches here. And yeah, he did not take on e4 yet, so this is a surprise, as we can, maybe a little bit of a surprise, as we can see on Kostya's live feed. So d3, it looks a little bit weird, but it's more aggressive than you might think. So if you take the queens off the board, then it's not like an aggressive position, but white has a lot to play for, and it's hard for black to play for a win, at least if you trade the queens. But you also don't have to. You can also go bishop g4, just pin the knight. That's also totally fine. And there are some lines that you can consider here. And meanwhile, we get e5 on the board of Zach. Zach played e5 in, I believe, every single OGB game since he started playing competitively again. So yeah, Zach is here, at least on his board. Okay, wait, maybe I could. There should be some more delay. So like this. Okay, I think now it should be very good. Exactly 15-minute delay, because the live boards have 15 minutes delay. So that's why we also have to delay the streams. So this is happening in the past, what you're seeing in the stream. Yeah, I think we just saw the handshake in this on the camera. Yeah, I think we did. Okay, e4, e5 on the board. And white could play knight f3. That's like the main move. But there are also a lot of different setups. You have so many moves you can play here. We get bishop c4. That's a move I play myself. And I even had a game against Zach in this variation. Knight f6. He also played it against me. Now I went d3. You can go knight c3, but then we get this opening with a weird name. Frankenstein Dracula variation, I think. I'm not sure. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but I'm not sure actually. Oh, and now we see an ad. Yeah, I don't have YouTube Premium, so that will happen like 1 or 2 times. So d3 has been played, yes. Yeah, exactly. So this is, oh, c6, interesting variation. Yeah, I'll just show the other variation real quick. Oh, this. Here, if you go knight c3, knight e4 is a possibility, with the idea that after takes you go d5, and here black is already better, but here you can play queen h5 and threaten mate, and I believe that this is called the Frankenstein Dracula variation, but not entirely sure. Okay, but d3 has been played, and now c6. Knight f3 played by Ivan, and now after d5, he will probably play bishop b3, and then Zach shouldn't take the pawn on e4. I will show that very quick. So d5 is very logical to grab space in the center and also to break in the center. Then bishop b3 is a move. And now there's a trick. If you take the pawn, this is a pretty bad mistake actually, because now you can go knight g5, attacking the pawn on f7, and there's no way to defend it. You have to play bishop e6, but now the position is just very, very good for white. Now you just take here, and then you probably take on e4, and you have a very nice pawn structure. This is pretty bad, and you just have a very good position. So this is a trick, and Zach will not fall for that, I believe. d5 has been played. Now you could take on d5, but bishop b3 I think is the main move here. Yeah, but I think taking is also fine, and it might actually just transpose into the bishop b3 line. But with bishop b3 you are more flexible, so you can take sooner or later. You don't have to take immediately. So I think bishop b3 makes more sense. And Kostya's opponent Yanis, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. Yanis, I don't know. But yeah, he's still taking a think here. He has been thinking for 7-8 minutes, and he knows this move. That's what I'm always saying. Like, he knows this line, of course, but maybe he's thinking about what to do. So yeah, I think the two main moves are to take on e4 and to go bishop g4. Those are basically the two main moves. Yeah, and yes, exactly. So d5 has been played, and now Ivan is taking a think right now. I think he will go bishop b3, just drop back the bishop, and then Zach shouldn't take here, but he can play bishop e6 or bishop d6. Maybe even a move like knight bd7, but I think that's a little bit unnecessary, but should also be fine. So yeah, I think bishop d6 will happen because the pawn e5 is also hanging, so that's why bishop e6 will probably be a bad move. But also I'm not sure because bishop e6, if you take, you could take, but yeah, it should be just good for white. So yeah, bishop b3 has been played indeed, and now bishop d6 is on the board. And it's possible to take on d5, and if the pawn takes back, then to pin the knight. I think I would go for that. So that's a solid line, and Zach really has to know what's going on here, because there are a lot of tricks. It doesn't look like it, but Zach has to be careful, because the pawns here in the center, they might be strong right now, because they just control everything, they grab a lot of space, but in the future it might turn out differently, because white will attack the pawns with everything that white has. So it's not very easy to defend them long term. So white will put a rook on e1, then a knight on c3 probably, and some queen on e2, something like this, pin the knight on f6 with bishop g5. So basically every white piece will be attacking at least one of the pawns. So black has to be careful to defend them. But if black manages to defend the pawns, and if white doesn't win any of the pawns or creates a weakness or something like that, then black will probably have an advantage because of the strong black center. So yeah, that's kind of like the the pawn structure explained. And Yannis plays queen c7. Interesting move. I don't know if I have seen that ever in my life, actually. Like, I know you can play queen c7 very early in a lot of variations, but in this particular variation, I'm not sure. It's definitely completely fine. So it's indicating that he didn't want to go for this line where you take on e4, and if you take back, you trade the queens. And I can understand that, because I think against a stronger opponent, it's not what you want. So Kostya is the favorite today, and he has the same approach as against Zach, basically. So he's the favorite, and he just wants to have a normal position where he's not really at risk of losing, so without a lot of complications. And that would be perfect in this position. Here, if you trade off queens, you don't really have to worry about getting checkmated ever in your life, and you just develop your pieces, and you are a little bit better because you made the first move. So yeah, that's why you just have a small advantage, and you will squeeze your opponent until you eventually win, but maybe you don't manage to win, and then it will be a draw, but that's still a very long way to go. But we get queen c7. Interesting move. And now Kostya has to make a decision. Does he just leave the pawns as they are and play a move like bishop e2 or knight d2, something like this? Maybe he could also play g3, bishop g2 and fianchetto the bishop, but I'm not sure about that. Or do you go for some pawn move? But I think it doesn't really make sense to take on d5 or to play e5, because you already moved your pawn to d3, and if you take on d5, or if you play e5, you would like to have your pawn one step further on the board, on d4. So I think taking or playing e5 would both be very slightly inaccurate. It's not like black is better or anything, but I think it's just that if you push your pawn to d3, you definitely don't want to waste a move playing d4. But if you go for this e5 move, then d4 is an important move to protect the pawn, and black will also go c5, and you have to fight for the center, so e5 is not a good move, but also taking on d5 is not what you want, maybe. Still completely fine, obviously. But yeah, okay, maybe this is a little bit better than e5. After a move like bishop e2 and then short castles, the next move, that should just be okay. It's a little bit passive. It is a little bit passive. And did Kostya take? Did he take? I'm not sure. Wait, let me check. I think that he took on d5, but I'm not entirely sure. But we will see that on... Ah, yes, yes. He took on d5 and played c4. Oh, that's interesting. Ah, I like this move. I really like this move. So Kostya still knew this, queen c7. It makes sense because he prepared the line. So it definitely makes sense that he still knows that move. And c4, okay, that's an interesting move. So you're challenging the center of black, you're taking the pawn, and black has to make a decision. Probably he will take on c4, and then Kostya takes back. But I think this is a position where you're slightly better, you have nothing to worry about, and I would like to play this position. You will play knight c3, bishop somewhere, maybe e2, bishop e3, short castle, something like this. just develop all your pieces, and in the long term, your plan might be to push the pawns up the board. So to play b4, c5, a4, b5, something like that. And then you want to create a passed pawn. So yeah, that's what you want. And you have this majority, so that's the plan. And I think here it's very hard to lose. Definitely, obviously still possible, but I think this is just very slightly better for white. And I had a position just like this when I was doing training yesterday with my coach. I had a very, very similar position. The pawn was still on c2, and there were some other developing moves. But then the question was, does white go for short castle or for long castle? And it was very, very instructive, because the black king was on g8, and I thought you go long castle and then you bishop d3 and go for this huge attack, but the black counterplay would have been too strong. So it was just better to develop and then go for short castle and then just be a little bit better and go for this plan to throw up the pawns and to try to create a passed pawn. Yeah, oh, and I also remember that I forgot to pin this one thing. I'll just do that from my phone real quick. I will pin the time control to the Chess Dojo channel so that you can see what kind of tournament this is, and also link to the live board will be there. I will just do that real quick. I have to look for the message. Ah, here it is. So this. Okay. And then I need the link to the live board. Okay, yeah, I will just a second here. Just a second here. Yeah, this is very difficult to do that without. Ah, yes, okay. Now I got it. Now I got it. Okay. This. Also pinned it in my chat. Okay. Now we're good to go. This and then the live board. Okay, so there you can see the message. So yeah, we are having a 9th round classical Swiss tournament with the time control of 90 minutes for the entirety of the game and just 30 seconds per move. That surprised me yesterday because I misread the time control and I thought that we would get another additional 30 minutes, but then you guys in chat told me, no, there won't be 30 minutes, and I was very surprised. And yeah, that was crazy because then we had two mutual time scrambles, and yeah, that was pretty amazing, and I enjoyed doing that a lot. So I think this time control is pretty nice actually, because it's more entertaining. Oh, and right now I will change the background. because someone said that it's hard to read the player names and the ratings, so I will just really quickly use this. Okay. Boom. Okay, yeah, I think this is way better than before. Now it's a little bit darker and we added a shadow and now it's, yeah, this is way better. Yes. Chat, do you also think this background is better than the one before? I definitely think so. Okay, but let's get back to the chess. So on Kostya's board, knight f6 happened to protect the pawn on d5. And the idea is that it's not very good move to take on d5, because then the knight takes back. I will just show that. This could happen, but I think this is not what Kostya wants, because now he has this weird pawn on d3, and I'm not very sure why he would want to go for this position, because usually the pawn is on d4, then it would be a normal IQP position, but here you wasted a move to put your pawn on d4, so black is already slightly better according to the engine. So taking on d5 wouldn't make any sense, and that's why Kostya plays knight c3, just developing his knight, attacking the pawn on d5 once more, but I think that you could even consider a move like knight c6 to just leave the pawn on d5 hanging. Okay, maybe that's a very bad move. Ah, yeah, you take with the pawn, and then, okay, knight c6 was not a great move, but what I wanted to say is if you play like any move not protecting the d5 pawn, I don't know, like, I don't actually know, maybe a6, like this is not too bad, because white doesn't really want to take, or maybe he does, but those pawns are not worth like 2 pawns, because they are very weak, and this pawn on d5 will most likely just fall in the near future, and that's why it's not too bad. But I think that probably e6 will happen to just protect the pawn on d5, and then we might see the IQP on both sides actually, which is pretty interesting. Or he could take on c4 and then go for this pawn structure, which is a little bit more double-edged, but I think I will play e6 to just keep the tension in the center, and if white takes, you can just take back with the pawn, open up your bishop, the bishop can go to e6, maybe even to g4, and now if white has to play d4, then he already wasted a move again. So e6 is definitely possible here, and I think it's a pretty good move, but it has not been played yet. So knight c3 was the last move, and now it's Yanis's turn, and he will have to figure out what to do here. And I think then we should go back to Zach's game. Yes, Ivan took on d5 indeed. Pawn takes, bishop g5, and now bishop e6 happened. And here knight c3 is the main move. And then black can play queen a5, and then castle happens, you go queen e1, and I know a little bit of theory in positions like this, and I always prefer this position from the white side, just very slightly, but I also think that I have a pretty good score here. I've played this in OTB like maybe 3 or 4 times, and maybe I won like every single game with this variation. Oh no, I didn't. I did not. I did not. But I still have a pretty good score, I think. So yeah, Ivan is only 10 years old. It's very close that his elbows can reach on the table. He's very, very small. Only 10 years old. But still a very, very strong player. Better than most of you guys in chat. So he already has a rating of above 2000. So yeah, he's a very, very strong player and a prodigy. So yeah, I think his future will be bright, and he might become a chess pro. Next Magnus, yes, maybe. But I'm not sure if like he is a very, very good player, but he is not like the top of the top, I think. There is, for example, Faustino Oro. I think he is just 1 year older than Ivan, and he just turned IM. I'm sure you know him. So there is a pretty big difference between 2050 and IM, International Master Level. But still, he's an amazingly strong player. And yeah, Ivan has a year. But to go from 2000 to 2400, that's very, very hard. But with K40, it's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it will be very hard. Yeah, 400 elo, that's a lot. But it's possible, but it will be very, very hard and takes a lot of training. But I think it's more realistic to plan like 3 or 4 years for him to reach the IM title. But it would be interesting to know when he started playing chess. Maybe Zach has the chance to speak to him after the game, and I think he will ask him that. Oh, the cameras are desynchronized. Yeah, let me check. So we need this delay. So this is at 15 minutes. Why is this not at 15 minutes? Okay. Now I think it's working. I don't know why this happens. Like the one live stream is always faster than the other one. I have no idea. I'm always adjusting them to exactly 15 minutes. So just like this, exactly 15 minutes. And also here, exactly 15 minutes, yeah. Because the boards have a delay of 15 minutes. And is it better right now? Oh yes, I think it's almost perfect. Not completely perfect, but almost. But yeah, the problem is that there is this delay, and the organizers asked to delay the boards and also the cameras. Yeah, basically perfect. I can try adjusting very slightly, but I think it should be fine, right? I think it should be fine at the moment. Okay, bishop e6. It's all good now? Yes. Nice, nice. So, bishop e6, knight c3 has been played. And now queen a5 is the main move. And after that, white can play short castle, but he could also go queen d2 with a potential long castle. So that's both possible. But I think after queen a5 we will see the short castle and then queen e1 next move. That's what I will play, I believe. Yeah, knight c3 happened. And you don't have to play queen a5, but I think it's the best move. because right now the pawn on d5 is almost hanging. You can't take it immediately because of some fork on a5. Oh, but maybe you can actually. You can take with the bishop and then take with the knight. So if knight c6 were to happen, you can just take the pawn on d5, and the knight can never take because it's pinned, and you would lose your queen. And if the bishop takes, then knight takes, the knight is still pinned. Now you might think queen a5, that's a check, and the knight is also hanging. But now you just retreat, you save your knight, and then life is good, you up a pawn, and you have huge winning chances. So I think queen a5 is like almost an only move. You don't want to play d4, that's strategically very bad, a very bad move, because then after a move like knight e4 and bishop e7, white can take on e6, and that pawn structure would be horrible, because black has the weak pawns, and also white's bishop is better, the white's knight have this amazing outpost on e4, so everything would just be amazing for white. So d4 is not a good move, and I think queen a5 is actually the only move here to not be worse. Because the pawn is hanging. Oh, I think you might also be able to play bishop c7. Yeah, I think bishop c7 is also fine. Then you're protecting the pawn on d5 with your queen from d8. So that's also completely okay. But you also have to keep an eye on the pawn e5, so you can't play bishop e7, because then the pawn on e5 might be hanging. Then there are also some tactics, but yeah, bishop e7 does obviously not make a lot of sense, because you just moved your bishop from f8 to d6. So to put the bishop back to e7 is pretty stupid actually. So bishop c7 is possible, I believe, but queen a5 is the best move and also the main move. Yeah, so queen a5. Queen a5 will most likely happen. Hello, welcome in chat. Hello, hello. So today both of the games are pretty slow, so there are not a lot of moves. Okay, e6 has just been played by Yanis. That makes sense to protect the pawn on d5. And then he will develop his bishop, go bishop e7, maybe bishop, yeah, probably bishop e7, and go for a short castle and just develop all your pieces. That's kind of the plan that you have. So yeah, e6, logical developing move. But as you might notice, you are blocking your bishop. So you would like to take your bishop and move it over this pawn and put it to f5, maybe g4, something like that. Would be kind of nice, but that's not possible at the moment. So now you have to figure out a plan what to do with your bishop. I think you can just play b6 and put the bishop on b7 and maybe even on a6. I think b6, bishop b7 is a good plan just to develop the bishop. And then once the pawn on d5 disappears, doesn't matter if it moves forward or if it takes on c4, then the bishop on b7 would be amazing. Because on b7 then it would just scope along the whole board, and because the king will also castle short, then the bishop would be an amazing piece, just eyeing the king. And yeah, it will. Right now it's pretty horrible, but then it would be an amazing piece. So this bishop has potential. Right now it doesn't look great, but it definitely has potential. A3 played by Kostya. Okay, A3. What's the idea behind A3? Is it to prevent bishop b4? Maybe. But does black want to go bishop b4? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. If you just play a move like g3, is bishop b4 a thing here? Maybe. Bishop b4, you can let him take, but you can also play bishop d2. And now after a move like castles and a3, you're hitting the bishop, and the bishop might have to give itself up. And I think this position should be slightly better for white. Maybe, but okay, I can see the evil bar. It says black is actually very slightly better. That surprises me. But I think it might have to do something with the pawn on c4. You would like to play bishop g2 and castle, but the pawn on c4 is always hanging. So that's maybe not perfect. So a3 is a very good move to just prevent bishop b4 with the idea of just giving up the bishop for the knight, and then the knight cannot put any pressure to the center anymore, and the black king is also ready to castle. So bishop b4 is a pretty good move actually. So that's why Kostya plays a3, and that move is also logical in the future to support some potential b4 ideas, because the plan is once black takes, you take back and you go b4 and just advance your pawns. So a3 has been played. Now we get bishop e7, also developing the bishop. But look at this. The eval says this is not a great move. But why? Why is this not a great move? It looks like the most logical move in the position. I would have played that. Okay, so what are the moves that you can consider here? The candidate moves. You could take on d5, but that was also possible earlier. I don't know what the difference now would be. Could also attack the queen somehow, play bishop f4. Maybe this is actually a little bit dangerous. Yes, maybe that's it. Knight b5 is attacking the queen, and then bishop f4 is developing a piece with a tempo, and then at least there is some pressure. So let's make the move and see if the evil bar reacts. Oh, it's good, it's good. So now the queen has to move. If queen a5 happens, then bishop d2 comes with a tempo attacking the queen, and now the queen has to retreat somewhere. That's why it doesn't make any sense to play queen a5 first of all. So you should just play a move like queen b6 immediately, or queen d8. I'm not very sure where the queen wants to go. Maybe just queen b6. Okay, and now my idea was to go bishop f4. Yes, that's also a good move. Because the threat now is knight c7. So if black would not be careful and just develop, then there's knight c7. That's a check to the king, but also a fork, and that would be winning the rook, and with that the game. So there is this threat here, and there's also the threat of playing a move like bishop c7 to target the white queen, sorry, to target the black queen. Oh my god, I can't even talk anymore. So the black queen doesn't have a lot of squares left, so there are potential ideas of playing bishop c7 and just trying to trap the queen. I think this is possible to see, and just as I say that, he did not see it. it's also not that important, but knight b5 was maybe a small chance. So I only looked at that move because I saw the eval bar reacting. So I can't see the engine lines, I can only see the eval bar. So I saw that, oh, there is something kind of good here for white, and then moves like knight b5 always come to mind, because you always have to look at moves which are attacking anything. So knight b5 is attacking the queen, and then you have some opportunities to play bishop f4, knight b5, and then just exert some pressure. But g3 is the normal move here, and the only problem with g3 is, it's probably not a problem, but you can't play bishop g2 immediately, because then the pawn on c4 would be hanging. So if black castles now, I think bishop g2 would not be a great move, because then black can take. If you take back, you can probably just take the pawn on c4, and black would be up a pawn, and there's not much counterplay. Maybe a little bit, but definitely not much. So the pawn is hanging, and you have to do something about that. You could take on d5, but then you have this double IQP position again, where you have this more passive IQP, and you still have to waste a move to advance the pawn to d4. So maybe that's not exactly what you want. So taking on d5 would not make a lot of sense, maybe. But then if you want to develop your bishop to g2, you have to do something at least. Maybe the plan is also to not immediately go bishop g2, but first of all go bishop f4. And that makes sense, actually. And g3 is preparing that, because g3 is protecting the f4 square in order for the bishop to go to f4 and attack the queen. So I didn't even see that at first, but that's definitely the idea behind that. And if the queen goes away and is not attacking the pawn on c4 anymore, then you can play bishop g2. So g3 is a pretty good move in my opinion. It's planning to go for bishop f4. So that's the idea behind it. And I like that Kostya's always playing fast. That's a very good thing. I think he has been up on the clock in every single game in this tournament so far, and that's a very, very good sign. It's a very good sign, because I think Zach has been down on the clock in every single game so far. So yeah, I think that, yeah, that's true. First game Zach played against Kostya. Zach was down on time. Yesterday Zach was down, okay, a little bit down on time, but not much. And today Zach is down on time again. And Kostya has always been up on time. Also yesterday against the GM with the black pieces, he played an amazing game, but then just overlooked one small detail at the end of a variation. He thought he was winning, but overlooked one tactic and then had to settle for a draw, trade off all the pieces and just go for the draw. And that was a little bit unfortunate, because he played very, very well. But you can't always win, so it's totally fine. It is what it is. So, any updates on Zach's board? Yes. So, what happened here? Knight c3 has been played. Zach played queen a5. That's the best move. He had short castles. Knight bd7, which is not great. And then we had queen d2, which is also not the best move. So here the better move is to play knight d6, and the knight is just more active on c6, and it's okay to allow this pawn structure, because now the black idea is to castle long and put the rooks on the g file and start an attack on the g file. So that's completely fine. And the knight on c6 is more active than the knight on d7. So activity is one of the most important aspects of a chess game, actually. So if you have, like, even if you're up a piece but you have no activity at all, it might be worse for you. So activity is very important. And here the knight can go to c6, where it has opportunities to go to d4, b4, and it's just controlling a lot of squares. Or it can go to knight to d7 to also protect the pawn on e5, but it's a little bit more passive. This is not a mistake or anything, but I know that this is an inaccuracy. So knight d7. The move right now is queen e1, and there's a nice threat here. So the idea behind queen e1 is that if black plays the most normal move in the position, which would be to castle, then there's a tactic which is pretty nice. So I will try for you guys to figure it out, but I can tell you it's not easy. It's like an opening trick, but it's pretty hard. So if anyone has an idea, feel free to write that into chat, and I'll show you the solution in like just a second. So castles would be a mistake because white can win some material here. It's +1. You can win a pawn. Only question is how to do that. So the right move here is to first of all take the knight on f6, and when the knight takes back, now you play knight takes d5, and now the thing is that you're attacking the queen, so black cannot take back because then you take the queen and win the game. So black has to either move away with the queen, but then you're just up a pawn for nothing, or black has to take the queen, and now you have an intermediate move, an intermezzo. You can take the knight first with a check, so black has to defend the check, and then you take the queen, and here you're just up a pawn and you have a great position, and I think Ivan would most likely win here. So that would be a trick. Now the question is, does that also work after queen d2? I think it might actually still work. Yeah, why not? Okay, I still think this would not be a great move because of bishop takes f6, knight f6, knight takes d5. Yeah, and that's exactly the same thing. The only difference is that the queen on e1 is also attacking the pawn on e5. That's a little bit important here. So now if we get queen c5, rook d1, now you want to go d4, and the queen is on e1 and attacking the pawn and also pinning the bishop potentially if the pawn takes on d4. And this is a long line, but I played this myself, so I kind of know what to do here. But I think in the future I might not play this anymore. I'm not sure. I have to look at some more serious openings. This is not dubious or anything. It's just that with perfect play of black, it's equal, and that's not what you want with the white pieces. Okay, queen d2 on the board, and now there is a trick, and Zach has to be careful. So queen to c5 is the move after queen e1, and I think here it also makes sense because you have to just step aside because your queen is not protected right now, and there is this trick with knight takes d5. But the good thing is that Ivan is a very, very strong, not Ivan, that Zach is a very, very strong tactician, and I think that he will definitely see that because he is pretty strong in blitz, way better than me, in online blitz at least. I don't know about his OTB blitz rating, but in online blitz he's pretty strong compared to his OTB feeder rating. So that's indicating that he's very good at finding tactics and evaluating positions quickly. But he's also always taking his time. Right now he has spent half an hour for the first 9 moves. He's about to make move 10 and he already spent half an hour, so that's a little bit concerning once again, especially because there's no additional time. So yeah, you have to be careful with your time usage, and you definitely shouldn't waste your time. And I also don't really know how you can spend half an hour in this position. Zach knew this line, but for some reason he's below an hour right now. What surprised him? I'm not sure. I think White just played completely normal moves. Let's quickly check. So here, for bishop e6, he spent 11 minutes on bishop e6. Okay, so maybe his opponent played this as a surprise. And maybe he actually prepared with a game that I played against Zach, because I played this line against Zach. And in our game, Zach completely outplayed me, and at the end I had like a reverse tactic. There was like a trap, and I managed to win. Yeah, that was a little bit lucky at least. But yeah, at the end I won. And then after that we also got to know each other, which was very, very nice. And there's also still a YouTube recap video on Zach's channel about the game that us two played against each other in Germany in the Münsterland Open. Yeah, and I believe the recap is very, very good. And also the game was pretty instructive and nice to look at, I would say. Let's get back to the games we have in front of us here today. So Yanis castled, and then we had bishop f4, just as expected, attacking the queen, and the queen has to do something now. Now you might think you can block with the bishop and trade off, but now there is a tactic here. Now there is knight b5, and that's a fork to the queen and to the bishop, and eventually after some, you can give this check, but then b4 happens and the queen is hanging, but also the bishop is still hanging, and that's why white is just completely winning. And also if the queen moves somewhere, then you can also just take the bishop, and you have one more piece than your opponent. So bishop d6 just blunders a piece. And then you have to think about what to do. You have to move your queen. e5 is also not possible, because you would just take. So you have to move your queen. And I'm actually not really sure where you want to go. So you might want to still have pressure on the pawn on c4 to prevent the bishop to go to g2. But if you play a move like queen c5, I think white has the chance to attack the queen somehow. I'm not even sure if it's d4 or b4, but both of those moves come to mind. So you could play like d4 and then if the queen moves, then go c5 actually. Something like this looks pretty good. And then the knight is coming to e5, the pawns will run up the board. So queen c5 is a bad move because it allows d4, and after that you're attacking the queen, and then you will have this majority here, and it will be very easy to create a passed pawn, at least in the long term, to just push the pawns and then at some point go c6 or something like that. And also you just have a great position here because you have the space advantage, you have everything that you would ever want. So you have space advantage on the queen side, you have control in the center, and you might also want to go for a king side attack here. So bishop d3 comes to mind. The bishop is eyeing the pawn on h7, and then moves like h4, h5 could happen. I'm not saying that that will happen, but it's possible. So c5. So yeah, that's why queen c5 is not a great move. Queen c6 is the only other move which is still exerting pressure on the pawn on c4. But now it might even be possible to go bishop g2. I don't really know, but maybe not. Okay, if you take on c4, then I wanted to go castle. And now there is a lot of pressure on the queen on c6. And a move like knight e5 or something along the lines of that will happen in the future. And yeah, I think you shouldn't put your queen on c6 because the bishop wants to go to g2 anyway, and the queen is just standing in the scope of the bishop. So that's not what you want to do. But then where do you go? Chat, where would you go? What would you do? Because I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you just go completely back. Queen d8. That's possible. But then I'm not sure if that was like what you wanted, because you moved your queen to c7 earlier, and yeah, that's why I don't know if you want to just go back. No, Zach's opponent is not unrated. Does it not say? Oh, it does not say the rating here. True. No, but his opponent is very, very strong. You might think that he is unrated because of his age. Right now he's not at the board, but his ex-opponent is only 10 years old and he already has a rating of 2054, I believe. Yes, 2054. And that's crazy good. So, yeah, he's definitely a prodigy, and the chances are pretty high that he will become a GM. But that's still like far away in the future, so that will take some time. Yeah, you are right though. It does not show on the chess.com right now, but unfortunately I'm not able to do anything about it at the moment. But what I can do is actually create a text, and I will do that real quick. I will just create a text in OBS with his rating. Okay, and put that way smaller. Still way smaller. Like this. Still too big. Okay, I think now it's kind of fine. Yes. So now you're able to see the rating of Zach's opponent. yeah, I am a prodigy too. Yeah, maybe I am. Maybe I am. But I'm not a prodigy like Ivan. Ivan is like a real prodigy. I'm actually not sure if I am a prodigy. Maybe a little bit. But yeah. I'm also 7 years older than him. And my peak is not a lot higher than his rating. But a little bit higher, yes. Oh, what's Zach's FIDE rating right now is 2013. So his rating is not 2074. His FIDE rating is 2013. As you can see here, so he lost some points. He was a little bit higher in the last month, but he played, I think, 2 events which were not great, and also one event which was only like decent. So he lost some points, but that's extra motivation for him to keep going and to improve. And I think he will get the rating back, and sooner or later he will be a CM, potentially even an FM, but also that takes some time. And there is a huge difference between me and also Ivan, and between the rating of Zach, because me and also Ivan, we both have K40, so the K factor 40. I will not exactly explain what that is, but Zach has K20, and basically Ivan and me can just get twice as much points as Zach can get for every single game. So the maximum gain of rating for one game for Ivan and me, because we are under 18, is 36 points. So Ivan and me, we can both get 36 points per game, and Zach can only get 18. So we can just gain twice as much. So if we play amazingly good, then we can gain twice as much as Zach is able to gain. And yeah, that's why it's way harder for Zach to improve. Even if he plays an amazing tournament, then you still have to be consistent enough to always play well to improve, and you can't just play one amazing event and then just gain like a huge amount of rating. So that is not because he played more tournaments than me, and I think actually that I played way more tournaments than Zach, but I'm not sure because I'm playing like so many tournaments. I've played 200 plus rated tournaments in my life, and I've already at age 17 played more tournaments than most adults will ever play in their life. But I'm not sure about Zach though. But I think I've played more tournaments than Zach. That's a good question. I'm actually not sure how many tournaments Zach has played, but I think not as much as me because he had this huge break because of university. I think he stopped playing competitive chess for 6 years or something like that. I think it was 6 years. He told me about it, but I don't exactly remember the time frame. I just remember that it was like a huge amount of time. So yeah, he spent a lot of time not playing competitive chess at all. So I think I played more tournaments than him. But that doesn't have to do anything with the K factor. So there are 3 different factors basically. So if you are under 18, under age 18, and also under 2300 rating, then you have K40, just like me and Ivan. And then the moment you turn 18, you just get K20, and then it's harder for you to get points. Or if you go above 2300. then you also get k20. And then there's also k10, which you get once you reach 2400. And then it's even harder to gain rating. But it's also kind of a good thing because it's also harder to lose rating. So yeah, that's kind of the way it is. Ooh, and we have an interesting move on Zach's board. Goes for long castle. Okay. Now, long castle has been played. Okay. Is there some tactic here? I'm not very sure. Is it possible to do the same thing again like before? Because the evil bar does not like what's happening here. But the problem now for white is that he can't do this intermediate move to get rid of the knight. So before you were able to do this and then take, but here that's not possible because Zach can trade the queens, and now you cannot take here and give a check. That's the key detail, because if you have to take back the queen, then after this it's just lost because you're down a piece. So this is not the right move to play, but I can see why the engine says that this should be pretty good for white. So long castles was a mistake. I don't know why it's not highlighting it as a mistake. I never understand when a move is brilliant, when it's a mistake. I really don't know. And I remember yesterday there was a move played by Kostya, which was a good move, but I think the evaluation changed like 0.4 difference or something, and then it highlighted the move as a mistake. But right now the evaluation changed to 0.8, and this is not a mistake, so I have no idea how they determine when it's a mistake and when not. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know at the moment. So first of all, I will quickly go over the moves on Kostya's board, and then also I will answer your question about my peak and about my rating. But first of all, I'll check what Kostya is doing right now. So Queen d8 has been played. It's a little bit passive, but maybe that's just the best. You can do that oftentimes, just put your queen back to d8, because from d8 it has all the options. And now we had knight b5. Ooh, and this is a mistake. This is a mistake, but why? Looks logical to play knight c7, but then we had knight c6. That's the best move. Okay. So knight c7, then just rook b8. Or maybe even e5? Is that a move? I'm not sure. I think knight c7, you might be able to go e5, and then the knight will get trapped at the end. I think that's probably the reason. Knight c7, now e5. Yes, yes. Yeah, e5 is a great move here, and Kostya missed this detail, because now the whole idea between knight b5 is just gone, so this is not working, and if that's not possible, then knight b5 doesn't make any sense at all. So this was a mistake. So this question mark is definitely fair, because now the knight moved from a pretty good square to kind of an awkward square, and also it doesn't do anything there because of this tactical justification of allowing the knight to infiltrate to c7. So I will show why this is very bad. So knight c7, and then e5 will happen, and that's cutting off the connection between the bishop and the knight on c7. And now, if the bishop moves away, then the knight is just hanging and you're losing a piece. And if the knight takes the rook, then we take the bishop first of all. And now there's this idea that you see oftentimes, that the knight on a8 just capture the rook, but now it's not getting out. So the bishop will just move somewhere, and then after that the queen will pick up the knight. So let's just say we get a position like this, just to make some moves, and then we will take the knight. And now, if we do the count, black has two pieces for a rook and a pawn, but the two pieces are way better in this position, because first of all, white has those double pawns here on the f-file, and then also there are still a lot of pieces on the board, and the bishop pair is very, very strong always, and the pieces will just outplay the rook and the pawn. So usually, if you get two pieces for a rook and a pawn, you made a very, very good deal with that. So sometimes two pieces are even better than a rook and two pawns, but that depends on the positions. Sometimes also a rook and a pawn is better than two pieces. If the pawn is a passed pawn, then it's definitely better in some cases. But here, the pieces are way better. So this line is not easy to see, and I think I would have missed that in a classical game. Definitely possible. So yeah, the other idea would be to take on e5 to guard the knight, but now black can take on e5, just take back. If you take the knight, then this knight is hanging, because the bishop has been removed, and the knight can unfortunately not capture the queen. So here, in this position, you can't capture the knight. What you also can't do is capture the rook, because then, first of all, black can trade off the knight, and then even go bishop g4, and immediately win back the piece, and then also just have a completely winning position. So this e5 idea has been missed by Kostya, and this is mentally not easy. So I think he should take a little bit of time right now to adapt to the new situation, because he thought he would just have a good position. Because knight b5, if you go rook b8, I think this is pretty bad actually. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I don't know how to play chess. Okay, but yeah, maybe there's just nothing to do, even here. It looks like there might be some tactics, because the rook can be attacked by the bishop, but maybe there's just nothing. If the knight retreats, then the rook will retreat, and then we will have the same position. So yeah, maybe this was also not be great. Okay, then this knight b5 move is a little bit strange. So here there's definitely a threat to go knight c7, and if black has to play knight a6, then it probably should be better for white, because this knight on a6 is very badly placed, and now the knight on b5 can also not be pushed away with a6. So if this has to happen, then knight b5 definitely makes sense, but the problem is that black doesn't have to play that. He can play knight c6. And now Kostya has a small problem, at least. Now he has to figure out what to do. At the very least, he can just develop, and then after a move like a6, just remove his knight, and now he kind of just wasted 1.5 moves. So he went knight b5 and just went back. That's a waste of time. And black also got a6 in the meantime, which is also like kind of useful at least. So yeah, Kostya wasted basically like 2 moves here, and that's not great. not at all. But that's probably what he has to do, because now he will see that after knight c7, e5 will happen, and then he has some very big problems, and he will just lose the game, I guess. So I think he will take some time, but he has also been thinking for quite some time now. Oh, and he plays bishop g2. Yeah, that's kind of like admitting your mistake. You say, okay, I was wrong. After a6, yep, I will drop back and then take it from there. And yeah, mentally it's not easy to play a move like that, because you're also showing to your opponent, okay, what I did didn't really make sense, and now you are maybe even slightly better already. And he will also know that. Only good thing is that Kostya is still up like almost 15 minutes on the clock, but that also doesn't matter too much, and is not like a very big difference. So yeah, but bishop g2 played, probably the best move according to the engine. Yeah, but it's not perfect, not what Kostya wanted. So let's check out what's happening on Zach's game. So yeah, only one move has been played, and that move was d4, and that's a very thematic move. The idea is, if black takes, this would be a dream position for you. The knight takes back, and now you're playing against this very weak IQP. The c-file is half open, the king is slightly weak, and also this knight is placed perfectly. It has this outpost in front of the IQP. So yesterday we did a whole lesson on the IQP. Or was it 2 days ago? I don't know if it was. No, it was yesterday. Yesterday we talked a lot about IQPs, meaning the isolated queen pawns. This is an isolated queen's pawn because there are no pawns on the c-file or on the e-file, and this is the pawn in front of the queen, so this is an isolated queen's pawn. It's a very interesting topic, but this position would be one example of a position where the pawn is just weak. So there is no advantage of having this pawn, and if you could, you would immediately put it back to c7 or something. The bishop is hanging right now, I know that, but if you could just straight bishops, put the pawn back here, you will do that every single day of the week. But pawns don't move backwards, and pawns also especially don't move backwards and like a knight. So that will not happen. If Zach plays pawn d5 to c7, then I will go bald. Yesterday we had this discussion, and I said if Zach wins the position, then I will go bald because it was complete draw. But if he plays pawn d5 to c7, then I will do it. Then I will accept my faith. Yeah, but I think that will not happen. I'm quite sure that will not happen. Now, nice transition to the question in chat. Is my hair color real? Yes, it is real. And I think it's not like a special color. That's just because of the light from above. I will show you. I'll just turn off the light and then I'll have normal hair. Now it's a lot darker, and I think now my hair looks more normal. So if you prefer this, by the way, if it's not very bright, then just tell me in chat, but I think the other perspective is a little bit better, because it will get dark very soon, and then you won't be able to see my nice background. So yeah, this is a big difference actually, but this is what my hair looks like, and not the other way around. So yeah, this is my normal hair, and that's just That's just the way it is. And yes, I will put it back. Yeah. Now it looks more golden, as you say. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yes. So we get some moves in on Kostya's board. So let's see. Yeah, the knight gets kicked back, and now he goes for d4. That's a great move. And now we have the classic Benoni structure. So you can tell that it's a Benoni structure if white doesn't have an e pawn and black doesn't have a c pawn, and the white pawn is on c4 and the black pawn is on d4. So this is like the Benoni structure, and black wants to go for some e5 and control the center, and white wants to play on the queen side and try to create a passed pawn on the queen side. And right now black has some spatial advantage in the center. So, and also the knight went to b5 to c3 and now has to move again. So this knight moved a lot already. Played knight c3, knight b5, knight c3, and now he will play knight e2 probably. Maybe knight b1, but I think knight e2 will happen. But also I'm not sure about that. Maybe even knight e4. No, that's probably a bad move. Okay, but as you can see from the arrows, a lot of knight moves, and that's always not a good sign, because the perfect case is that you're only moving your piece one time in the opening and not 5 times, because every piece is equal as important, so you should only move every piece once in the opening, maybe sometimes twice, but not a lot more than that. So a lot of beginners in chess, they immediately get their queen out and then just always move around with their queen because they think that's the most powerful piece, so they have to activate it. But that's actually not the case, because the queen is the most powerful piece, but at first it's more important to develop the other pieces, because the other pieces could attack the queen. So here is kind of the same thing. Kostya moved his knight, he moved his knight, he moved his knight, he moved his knight, and from here he will also move his knight at some point. So a lot of knight moves, and yesterday Kostya's opponent did that. The GM from Spain, Daniel Leal, he also moved his knight twice at least, and kind of, I don't want to criticize him too badly because he's a GM and I'm definitely not a GM. But he did make some moves, and if I would show them to my coaches, they would say don't move with the same piece over and over again. He moved the pawn 3 times in the opening, and at the end, at least in my opinion, he didn't really achieve anything with that. And also the same with the knight. He also moved the knight twice and didn't achieve anything with that. But yeah, that it's completely fine to move a piece twice in the opening, but if you have the option not to move it twice in the opening, then you shouldn't do it. So yeah, and Yanis played d4, attacking the knight, so the knight has to move, and the question now is, where does it go? Does it go to e2 to exert some pressure on the pawn on d4? But it will be very hard to attack this pawn once more, so I'm not sure if that's what you want. And I think this is just transposing into a Benoni line, but black has like 2 or 3 extra tempi. So if this knight would be on d2, I think that might actually just kind of be one Benoni line. And here the knight has to move back and then go here. So it has to waste a lot of time. So yeah, what I want to say is this position with the knight here looks kind of like a normal position you could get in the Benoni Open. And maybe even here black is already has an extra tempo. I don't exactly know. Maybe yes. And here it's even worse because white has to spend 2 more moves to even get that position, which would in itself not be perfect, but it's maybe the best you can do. So you could also go to e2, maybe to e4, but I think knight e4, then black might be able to take, and now he has this very strong pawn, and will now probably play a move like f6 and then e5, something like this. Maybe white can go e5 here. Yeah, maybe that's not the best. Oh, but you can justify it with tactics. So e5, what a great move. e5 is a very nice move, and that's the move you want to play. But at first I thought, oh, the pawn is hanging, I can't do that. But now, if you take and take, it doesn't matter if you take with the bishop at the end or with the knight. Then there's queen a5, that's a check, and a fork, also winning the bishop and the game. So yeah, e5 here, and this just almost looks lost. The evil bar also says it's just probably winning for black. So knight e4 is a pretty bad mistake, and he will not play that. He will not play that. So then it's basically between knight b1 or knight e2. And I'm not sure which one of those I would do. Probably knight e2. But it's not the only option. You could also go to a2. I'm not sure if that's the perfect square for your knight, but you can go there. It just looks like it's a little bit out of the position. Sorry for that. So d4 has been played, and oh, he goes knight a4. That's we looked at every single knight move, but not that one. So I looked at knight a2, knight b1, knight e2, knight e4. Not here and here because that's just hanging. But knight a4 is the only move I didn't mention, and also it's maybe a mistake. The engine just realized that. Yes, and now e5 is played, and that's exactly the same tactic that we just had. e5, and Kostya is in huge trouble all of a sudden. And that's not great news at all. It's the same thing. If you take on e5, then black can take, and again deliver this check and win one of the pieces on e5, and then you're just up a piece. And here after e5, it's very hard to play. Like queen a5 is incoming, and everything is kind of loose. So you have to go back to d2 maybe. But there are just so many good moves, like b5 that's trapping the knight, no? Is b5 just winning a piece? I think it is. Did Kostya blunder a piece? Yeah, b5. That's attacking the knight. Oh no, that's completely lost now. That's horrible. That's very horrible. Look at this. The knight is trapped on the rim, has no escape squares. Okay, that's very, very bad news. But then, can you even do anything here? I think you can't. Oh, this is very bad. This is very, very bad. E5. What do you even do here? I'm not sure at all, actually. But now the eval bar says it's not so bad anymore. Bishop g5 has been played. Yes, and that's the best move. But now the question is, what happens on b5? b5 is attacking the knight, and I'm not seeing what exactly to... Ah, you can take and then go queen c2, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. But why not? Oh, the knight can just be protected. Like this, probably. Oh, also not like that. Okay, all of the moves I'm making are just wrong. So, yeah, I don't know if you... I'm not sure. I don't know what the move is here. Here, maybe? And then after this... I don't know. Maybe some knight b4, but this is obviously pretty good. So, b5. And now, what's the idea? Ah, okay. I think it has to do something with this knight on c6. Because that's hanging. And the bishop is also on this diagonal. Okay, you're suggesting b5, take, rook c1. Yeah, rook c1 does make sense. Attacking the knight here, and if black were to take the knight on a4, then you can take this knight. But okay, here, this is still a very good position for black. Like the bishop will go to e6 and then b3, and this pawn is just so weak at the moment. This pawn is very weak, and this is amazing for black. And also the evaluation bar agrees with me here. This is a very, very good position. And there might also be some ideas of going queen a5, queen b5, and then forcing the rook back, and then bishop e6 immediately. So I think if you go queen a5 here, that's probably a pretty good move. Like queen d2, and here you're attacking the rook, and then your idea is just to develop, and you still have a great position. So yeah, it's a Benoni, as you say, but this is a very, very bad Benoni. It's a Benoni with 2 tempi less than a Benoni. So Benoni itself is probably not the best opening. It's objectively okay, but I don't know. People just think it's not a great opening, and I kind of agree with that. And this is a Benoni where you wasted 2 moves and you have your knight on the rim. So everything is just not working in the way you want it to. So you could just say this is a horrible position. That would kind of be the case here. But it says e5 is a missed opportunity. So the engine doesn't even know what's happening here itself. So maybe b5 first was the right continuation. Let's check. So b5. Yeah, I will check soon. Now I just have a small issue. I don't know why, but it happens like 1 or 2 times per stream that my whole screen just freezes. I have no idea why, but okay, it is what it is. It's fine. So knight a4 was a mistake. Now e5 was played in 45 seconds. And that's the same thing that I always say to Zach. Zach spends a lot of time in obvious positions and rushes in critical decisions. So here you can sense that there has to be something good in the position. Like the knight on a4 is placed pretty badly, and you can just, oh, sorry for that. You can just attack it with b5, and then it has no squares, and the knight is just trapped. There are some tricks still, but this is such a critical position. Sorry for that. Such a critical position, and you have to spend some time here, like 45 seconds for e5, and it's a missed opportunity. So d5 was probably the right move here, and maybe not. Maybe not. Or maybe yes. The engine also doesn't know what it wants. So b5, then if you take, the knight here is hanging, but you can play rook c1, attacking the knight on c6, and now maybe you take, or you play e5 first. That looks logical somehow. And to be honest, I have no idea what's happening here. But that's indicating that you have to spend some time. It's not a good idea to go for e5 immediately. And e5 has been played. And Kostya went bishop g5. And this is the current live position. And now b5 is possible, but then there might be some trick. But to be honest, I have no idea what's happening. I think I would just lose this position with both sides. So yeah, I don't really know what's happening after b5. But the knight is very loose, and rook c1 is an idea, removing the knight from f3 is an idea. So there are some ideas, but you would have to calculate for some time to find the best moves here. But yeah, you can say that it's not looking great for Kostya. His opponent, who was born in 2006, just as me, so he is 17 or maybe even 18, he maybe rushed a little bit with playing this e5 move, because it's a very critical position. I can't say position. I don't know why. Position. That's a very easy word. Position. Okay. Yeah, it was a critical position. And he rushed. And he could have done something better. Okay. But let's look at Zach's game. We have not been there in quite a while because Kostya had some interesting developments. Let's put it like that. So d4 has been played, and Zach responded with b6. Look at the eval bars, also not looking good at all. It's plus 1.5, so white is very, very close to winning. Okay, and why is that? Why is that? So he took on e5. That's the best move. Zach took. Now Ivan took. That's not the best, but also a very good move. Zach took back. And now it's Ivan's move. Ivan's move, and let's see, what can you do here? Can you maybe just play f4, f5, attacking both the bishops? The bishop has to retreat, and then you somehow take the pawn on d5, and you're up a pawn. I think that works. So f4, It does not work. Okay. Oh yeah, because bishop takes c3. Okay, so bishop e5. But there is something here. What is it? Chat, do you know? I'm always asking you if I have no idea yet what the right move could be. I'm always asking you. So bishop takes e5. And now what's the move? What's the move? Hmm. I'm not sure. Not at all. But there's something here. There is something. But what this something is, I don't know. So I really don't know. Because bishop c3 is kind of coming no matter what you do. So I'm not sure what. Okay, I think I will check with the engine. If no one has a suggestion in chat, then I will just check with the engine because I don't know. I'll give you like until we reach 1 hour 47, so 30 seconds from now, to come up with some idea, because I really don't know how to continue here. Like the position is good, and maybe that's just it, and there's nothing concrete. Maybe you just play a move like rook e1 and just improve your piece placement, and then put the knight in front of the IQP, and you just have a good position. But I don't think that it would be plus 1.2 if you would just have a good position. Okay, he played queen e2, and isn't c3 hanging somehow? Queen e2 has been played. Let's see what the evil boss says. It's the best move. Probably. I will just check real quick if queen e2 is indeed the best. No, queen d3 is the best move. Queen d3. What's the idea behind that? You're improving the placement of your queen, and potentially there are ideas of going queen a6 and starting an attack when the queen moves. But why is this so strong? Like, I'm not fully understanding. I don't know. So I will just completely check with the engine. I just saw the first move. So queen d3. Ah, the idea is to bring back the bishop. Okay, that makes sense. And now the queen has some problems because you're threatening all kinds of stuff. For example, knight takes d5, which would attack the queen, and you would win at least one pawn. Although you have to be slightly careful there, but all kinds of knight jumps come into consideration here. And the queen has to go somewhere, and then you're arguing that the queen will be attacked soon and that you have a pretty good position. But also the evil bar now changed its mind. So let's go back to this moment. Okay, no, now it says queen d3 is the best move. It's plus 1.2. And after king d7, what to do? Now knight b5 immediately, and then bishop d2 next move. So the threat is to kind of almost trap the queen. If a6 happens here, then you go knight d4. Okay, and then you just say you have a good position. Okay, I can understand that. But it's not easy to see. He went queen e2, which is also completely fine. And now Zach has to evaluate if he is able to take on c3. That's very complicated. And I see the eval bar, it says +1. So if Zach is even able to take, then there will definitely be sufficient counterplay, and white has a very good position. But I think if he goes back, like bishop d6 or something, white could also consider taking on f6 and completely ruining the black pawn structure. So I think if you go back to d6, to c7, I don't know, then you just have a bad position and like no advantage. But if you take on c3, here you have a bad position and there will be some attack, but you still have a pawn. Like obviously white has great compensation, but imagine you somehow manage to trade queens, then it might be fine for you. And if you trade a lot of material, then it might be better than it might be better to just have a pawn, and it might also be better to play for black, and black might also end up with an advantage if white finds nothing and just trades off everything, but that's not very likely, at least in the short term right now. So here, why is queen d3 better than queen e2? I think it's a little bit better to put the queen on d3. You said that black will take on c3 anyways. So if black will take anyway, then it doesn't make any sense to attack the bishop and force it to take on c3, because you said it will take anyway, and that's true. So you don't have to attack the bishop, and then it's better to have the queen on d3, because from there it's attacking the pawn, and it's also more active than on e2, so it's further advanced, at least slightly. So queen d3 would have been a little bit better, but he goes for queen e2, which is also a great move. And he is realizing that you can sacrifice the pawn on c3 and then have a great position, because this bishop on g5 will be very, very strong, because there's no black squared bishop on the black side, and this is the only black squared bishop on the board basically, and there are a lot of holes on the black squares around the black king. So imagine this trades off, and now a bishop lands on f4. I don't know if this is the best immediately, probably not. You should just give this check and force everything, probably, maybe not. So, this bishop, what I wanted to say, is a very great piece. And look at the scope, it's pretty dangerous right now. I just made some moves and it's looking pretty dangerous, but there is something better even. Zach's opponent Ivan is only 10 years old. He is definitely a prodigy. 10 years old and has above 2000 rating. So he's a very, very strong player. And you can see that in this game. He made no mistakes so far. He is up on the clock by half an hour, which is very concerning for Zach, because Zach has a bad position, but also he is down half an hour on the clock. So this is not ideal. And losing this game would be mentally tough, because then you're on half a point out of 3 games. There are obviously still 6 games remaining, but it was kind of a failed start if you lose this. It's not the end of the world. like not at all, because he can still come back and still play an awesome tournament. But mentally, sometimes it's difficult if you start on 0 out of 3, half out of 3, 1 out of 3. So it would be good for Zach, for his mental game, if he wouldn't lose today. But to be honest, right now it kind of looks like he will. But also the game is not over at all. So it's still a game for 3 results, and a lot can happen. And it's only move 14, so we're still not even close to like all of the complications that will arise in the middle game. So yeah, what I want to say, everything to play for, Zach can still win this. And we see developments on the board from Kostya. So b5 has been played, and Kostya is better now. So b5 was the move I said I didn't know what was going on. I'm just a commentator, and this is too hard for me to evaluate. And Kostya took on f6, and that's a good move. Probably the best move by the engine. And now black has to take back on f6 first of all. So bishop takes f6 will be played. Maybe he can take with the pawn, but to me that doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that will not happen. So bishop takes f6 will be played, I guess. And then what does Kostya want to do? Does he want to take on b5 and then go rook c1? Maybe. So if he takes and now plays rook c1, no, rook c1 is bad. Yeah, I think then you can just take here, and that would not be great. Okay. Ah, but here you can just play knight c5, because the bishop on e7 was protecting the square on c5. Okay, then here you have to think. Do you want to take back with the bishop and allow the knight a way out? Maybe even do that immediately, actually. Allow the knight a way out. Okay, maybe not. This game I'm always making moves, and every single move I'm making is just bad. So yeah, that's not great. So what I wanted to say, bishop takes, and you allow the knight a way out, the knight will escape, go to e4, and I think even though black has the bishop pair, I would prefer to be white here. As you can see, the evaluation bar says it's level, it's equal right now. But I think there's something to play for here as white. You have the good e4 square for your knight, but also the knight on c5 is just a very good piece. Oh, thank you very much for subscribing. Danny Bauer 34, thank you so much. Yeah, we had bishop takes f6, and he took back with the pawn, and that's a mistake. That's a huge mistake. Kostya is better now. Wow, Kostya is better. Okay, that's very quick turns of events, and that's great news. Because Kostya had an awful position, but all of a sudden it's just a lot better right now. Yeah, that's amazing news. That's really amazing news. So g takes f6. Now what do you want to do? I think first of all you take the pawn. Okay, you don't take the pawn. You take on e5. You don't take on e5. Maybe you take on e5. Maybe knight takes e5. No, this is obviously bad. Making myself look like a fool here. Ah, now there's bishop g4, attacking the queen, and also the bishop. And the knight will probably somehow get trapped. Okay. So, what's the move here? What's the move here? The knight on a4 is hanging, and you cannot go away with your knight because all of the squares are protected. But this knight on c6 is not protected at all right now, and we have this good bishop on g2, which is looking at the knight, but also at the rook behind that. So if the knight moves away, knight to, yeah, exactly as you say, I wanted to say exactly the same thing, knight d2 or knight h4 to remove the knight and free the way for the bishop. So then the bishop would be threatening to taking the knight on c6. So maybe, I have no idea, maybe this is better. Okay, it's not, it's a horrible move, obviously. Duh, like, who plays knight d2 here? Yeah, knight d2, what a bad move. Knight h4 is also bad. Yes, obviously. Every move is bad here. Bad move, bad move, bad move, bad move. But what's the good move? I don't know. So, I will ask you again. Chat, what do you think? I've tried all of the moves and it's not looking like anything is good. Yeah, as you say, after both the moves, bishop d7, just protecting the knight. Okay, it's not easy. So there is something here, but it's not obvious at all. So if you don't want to lose a piece, at least you can take on b5 and put some heavy piece on the c file. But then you end up in a strategically worse position. So that's maybe not great. Okay, but let's see. Maybe knight takes d4? Does that work? Because then at the end there's no bishop g4. Maybe knight takes d4, and if you take, then you take, and if takes, then you take, and then you go castle, and bishop d2, and life is good. Maybe knight d4. Let's try the move. No, not at all. Horrible move. Knight d4. Yeah, and this is okay. If I see this position, then I can totally understand why this is bad. This knight is just a monster here on d4, and there's no piece attacking that knight, and it will never be a piece attacking that knight, also never a pawn. So knight d4 is a horrible move. It's actually a horrible move. Okay. But we've tried every single one of the moves and everything was bad. So I'm actually not sure at all what to do here. So Kostya did not make a move yet. And I think I will just let you guys think for a little bit. And in the meantime, we will quickly check on Zach's game, because there are also some developments. He took on c3 indeed, he just took the pawn, and now we had a4 on the board. That's a very good move. The idea is to just go a5, and even with a sacrifice of a second pawn, it's still worth it, because white will have this huge attack. And this is like a great game from Ivan so far. He has not made a single mistake. Only 10 years old. He's also not feeling any pressure whatsoever. He probably knows that this game will be streamed and covered on the internet. So there will be a lot of people watching him play. So the normal 10-year-old kid would be very nervous for this, but look at him, he doesn't look nervous at all. He looks bored actually. He looks like he knows that he's winning. He's not winning, but he looks like he knows he has a great position. Wow, that's uh, seriously impressive by Ivan. Ivan Kukushkin. Remember the name. So a4, idea is to go a5, open up the a file, and then the a file and also the b file are opened up, and the king is in huge trouble here, and it will be hard to save the king. And I don't exactly know what your next move should be here actually. You don't want to play a5 because then the white queen can infiltrate, and that would be pretty bad because then you will lose the pawn on b6, and that's not what you want at all. But if you don't go a5, then white will go a5, and then the files open up and it will get complicated and not in a good way. So yeah, that's not a great sign. Okay, and Kostya played knight h4. Okay, what? Now knight h4 is the best move. It's a great move. I've tried the move before. You can look at the footage, and it said obviously a bad move. So Kostya played the best move, which is important. So that's good, first of all. But yeah, you made a good point in chat. What happens if just bishop d7? Just protecting the knight, first of all. What do you do here? Maybe now you take, and if he takes back, then you go rook c1, attacking the knight, because then this bishop will not get that active. So maybe that. But also you could try to go for an attack to sacrifice the knight and do something with queen h5. So maybe you can look a little bit crazy. No, I think it's not working. Wanted to play here and then knight f5 and just sacrifice everything and go for a mate, but that's not working. So bishop d7. It's a very concrete position, so maybe you can take and then play rook c1 and attack the knight. So I'll just make the move. Okay, it's a decent move, and now rook c1. In this position, every move I'm making is just bad. This is just bad, but why? This position is way too complex for me. I'm not understanding what is happening here. Maybe I have to think about the position for some time, and then I can try to tell you my thoughts, but I won't do that. I will not do that, because I guess no one wants to just see me think. Maybe something with knight f5 at some point, but I don't know. I really don't know. Ah, okay, but maybe I do actually. So you don't have to take here maybe, but this queen h5 move makes sense. I always just looked at knight f5, and then you want to put your queen to g7 to deliver the mate. But you can also play queen h5 and bishop e4, and then threaten to take the pawn on h7 and go for a huge attack right there. So I think here queen h5 is the move. Yes. And if he takes the knight, then bishop e4, and it's looking very good now. Completely winning, actually. The threat is queen takes h7, which would be mate. You cannot go away with the rook because of queen takes h7, king f8, and checkmate to the king. So that's why after bishop e4, the only move is to play f5. But now you can just take with the knight. You're threatening all kinds of mates, and you will just end up winning at least a piece. For example, after king h8, you can take on e7, threaten mate, you just captured a piece. You cannot take back because then the mate will happen. So this is the idea. So knight h4 is a great move, and now black has to decide. Does he want to protect the knight, or does he want to take on a4 immediately? If he takes on a4 immediately, I think strategically speaking it's already lost. Because I'll show you what happens. If you take, bishop takes c6, rook d8, then I think that we will see something pretty similar, like queen h5, and the bishop will go to e4, and from there try to threaten mate again. And additionally, if you play like bishop b7 to try to trade the bishops to eliminate white's strong bishop, then you did trade the good bishop from white, but now you end up with a horrible bishop, and this knight on f5 is such a great piece, and it's the perfect outpost for the knight. So here I think strategically speaking white is just winning, because this knight is better than this rook right now, and that's just a dream to have a scenario like this. Okay, so this is kind of like the whole point. So on bishop d7 there will be queen h5, and Kostya will go for a huge attack, and bishop d7 has been played. It's been marked with a question mark, and now Kostya is completely winning. According to the engine, queen h5 will be the move. Completely winning now. Maybe to take on a4 was the best you have, but there it's very obvious that it's just not a good position for you. And I think Yanis knows that he had a good position, but now bishop d7, queen h5 is queen h5 is incoming, and maybe there's just no way to stop the white attack. And that's great news for Kostya. And right now it's looking like he will win another game, and then he can be very happy with the results of today, because that a win is 100% of the points you can get today. So that's very, very good. And also then he has a good position in the tournament. He is on 2.5 out of 3, and he will play on the top boards, and then also face the strongest opponents, which is always good. You play those tournaments to play against some GMs, to even potentially make a GM norm. Still possible for Kostya, but that's a very long way to go, and it's way too early to comment on that. But he has been playing pretty well. Today it was somehow slightly shaky, because this knight b5 move was definitely a mistake. So yeah, that was not a great move, but apart from that, I think he has been and he is playing very well. And also today he managed to turn around this game from -1 to plus 2.3 or something. So now if he finds queen h5, it should just be completely winning. So we'll leave him some time to figure that out, and in the meantime look at Zach's position. First thing I'm noticing is that Zach is on 10 minutes and is move 16, and he just spent 30 minutes for his move. So queen c6 has been played. It is the best move according to the engine, so it's good that he spent some time to figure this out. But after move 15 he had 23 minutes, and now he spent 13 minutes for this one move, which is more than half of his time. I'm always doing that myself, and you know you have to move, but you're just not sure at all what you even want to move. But sometimes you just have to do something and just hope your best and just try to make some quick moves to like shorten the time advantage for your opponent and just try to survive, because you need time later. Zach has 10 minutes now, and that's not a lot, and only move 16. The opening just finished, and he will not get any time, no additional time in this tournament. It's a very hard thing to have, but it is what it is, I guess. So there won't be any time, and Zach has to maybe go to the toilet one time. So I don't know. He doesn't really have a lot of time left to think about his decisions. That's concerning. And additionally, he just has a pretty bad position. For example, a5 now. Yes, a5 has been played. So now Zach goes for b5. Immediately plays b5. That's good that he is playing fast. And if Zach gets the chance to play a6, I think he should do that to kind of close down everything. But I think now Ivan might play a6 himself to not allow black to go a6. Because if black plays a6, then the king is almost safe again, and there's not much happening maybe. But also this bishop is just such a strong piece then. Can even jump into b6. I'm not sure, but maybe a6 is a clever move here, with the idea of leaving this pawn behind as a weakness and also taking some space away from the king. And now this pawn is weak and this pawn is weak. And if we go back here, if you just play like a normal move, I don't know, like this, after a6, those two pawns are not weak anymore, but it's still a better position for you. So Ivan has to choose what he wants to do. And he does play a6. He's playing very fast to put some pressure on Zach's clock, which makes a lot of sense. Ivan has not spent much time, only spent like 37 minutes, not even 37, 36 and a half. So he has plenty of time remaining, and Zach does not have plenty of time remaining. So yeah, that's a good sign. Okay, and I think I will take a quick break, and I will be back in like 2 or 3 minutes. And in the meantime, you can think about the question in chat. Is queen h5 actually such a good move? Or might you be able to go king g7 and rook h8? Because that's possible, maybe. And just as I say that, the engine removed the question mark from bishop d7. So maybe bishop d7 is not a mistake. Maybe queen h5 is not the best move. But I think this is very complicated. But I will be back very shortly. Hello everybody, I am back. So, did I miss anything? Do we have any moves? We have 2 moves. Okay, let's start with Zach. King b8 is a mistake, it's a huge mistake. Okay, King b8. What does he want to do on Rook a5? Maybe just Bishop d7? Okay. It's a big mistake, so now Ivan is completely winning. And Zach is in time trouble, so it's looking horrible. Okay, but what's the win here? Just queen e5, take on f6, then you up a pawn. Oh no, you're not up a pawn because you sacrificed a pawn. Maybe not that. Bishop f4 also comes to mind, but then the question is, what do you do after king a8? Because there I'm also not sure actually. Yeah, I don't know, but it's not looking good. It's not looking good. I'll turn on the engine real quick. Okay, yes, it was rook a5. I'm taking the pawn on b5. And now what happens on bishop d7? Now just rook b1. And bishop a4 is a threat. And now if you go king e8, what then? Okay, I'm seeing the move, but I'm trying to understand why that's so good. Ah, okay, I know why it's so good. Queen d3. And now this bishop is overloaded. So the bishop has to defend the pawn on b5, because otherwise white will get a huge attack. But also this bishop has to defend the pawn on d5, because the threat is bishop takes f6 and then you take on d5. And this is like a double attack by the queen, and this bishop cannot defend both of the pawns at the same time. So rook a5 would be a great move, and rook a5 has been played. Zach immediately plays king a8, and he is giving back the pawn, but that's okay, because Ivan sacrificed the pawn. But now if you took it with the rook, yes. Yeah, and this is not looking great at all. You cannot take on a6, by the way, because of rook d8, that's a check. You take, the queen is hanging, and you would just lose the game. So queen takes a6 is not possible. And yeah, I mean, it's very hard to even do something here. Maybe bishop c8 can be tried. Maybe that's possible. And then take back with the pawn. I'm not seeing a knockout blow in that position yet. But there has to be something. Maybe after bishop c8, you can play bishop a4. I don't know. Or you just go back, defend the pawn, and you still have a great position. That's probably just the best. Yeah, so I think you go back, you defend the pawn, and now you have a great position and you're not even down a pawn anymore. So you don't have to win immediately. You can just make the quiet defending move and then go rook b1, bishop a4, bishop f4, and the attack is amazing and it's very hard to defend this. And wait, rook takes b5. Now knight e4 has been played by Zach. Okay, it's interesting, and I think that's a good move actually. You're attacking the bishop, and if the bishop takes the rook, then there will be a fork to the queen and to the rook. The queen moves, and then you take the rook. And the evil boss says this is an amazing position and completely winning. And I also think that it's probably very good for black, but maybe you can still try. Like knight e4 is an interesting practical move because it's not very obvious that you're winning after bishop d8. And also you can't defend both of the threats at once, so I guess bishop d8 is the only move because this is a serious threat and this is also a serious threat. And you cannot play bishop d2 in order to prevent this, because then you would just take the bishop, and if the queen takes, then you take the rook, and you just up a rook. You just won a rook. So bishop d8 is the only move here, and he can basically play that in like 2 or 3 minutes to put some more pressure on Zach, but also it's good that he makes sure, because it is kind of like the only move in the position. I don't see another move. Yeah, I think bishop d8 is just only move. Yeah, bishop d8. And after that it won't be easy, but maybe Zach still has the chance to survive. Okay, but let's go to Kostya's game. So the question was, is queen h5 actually winning, or is maybe the eval bar slightly off? Because king g7 there looked interesting at least. And now Kostya played bishop e4, and that's a great move. Chess.com said it's a great move, and now that I let the engine run for a little bit, it says that this is the best move. So bishop e4 is the best move in the position, and basically it's the same thing whether you go queen h5 or bishop e4. It doesn't really matter because you want to play both moves and then attack the pawn h7. And now king g7 has been played, and I think that's the only move, because otherwise you still can't take the knight. This would transpose into the other variations we saw earlier. Now this is a threat, and you can only go here, but this is completely winning for white, because you still won't be able to defend the pawn on h7. So this is just game over. But Yanis correctly plays king g7. And now the question is, how do you continue from here? Because don't forget, your knight is still hanging. At some point you have to do something about that. And I'm actually not sure how you do this. So queen h5 would attack the pawn, but then black has two options. He can play rook h8, but also h6. So if you play queen h5, then I think after rook h8 maybe, I think then black shouldn't have too many problems with this king, because I don't see how to continue the attack. It takes some time to continue here. And what's important is that after bishop c6 and knight f5 check, that here the king can run out. So here the king can go this way. If this was forced, so if the bishop would be on e8, that would be very bad, because if the king is here, this is checkmate. But that is not the case. So it's not easy, at least. So here you really have to prove your advantage, and your knight is hanging, and what do you do about that? What do you do about that? Because I'm not sure. You can't just play a slow move because then your knight will be gone. You have to do something concrete, but I'm not seeing it at the moment. I'm really not seeing it at the moment. Okay, queen h5 is also not forced, and you see the EVA bar just jumped back up, so queen h5 is not the best move at the moment. So there's something way better. But the knight is hanging still. Kostya hasn't moved the knight. So the question is, how do you save the knight? Or how do you pose problems to black which are bigger than the threat of capturing the knight? How can you do that? Could try queen f3, but I guess after a move like queen c7, everything is still protected, and then I don't know how to continue from there. Okay, but you could, now that the king is on g7, try something of taking on c6, giving a check, and then going infiltrating with your queen somehow, but I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I'm not sure what to do here. Okay, I'll check with the engine. Okay, queen f3. That's the move we had. Then I said probably just queen d7. Okay, this is very bad. Because of knight f5. You give up your knight. And now take the pawn. And now now you can pin the knight to the queen. Okay. That's an important detail. Okay, so that was a very complicated and long line. But it showed that it's not really possible to go queen c7 because there will potentially be a pin on the knight. But then my question is, what happens if you go rook c8? Because you can't pin the rook. Okay, if you do the same thing, knight f5, takes and takes, and then rook h8, then it's not easy. And the eval bar says it's just a draw. I think it will be perpetual check here. So here, at least this would be perpetual check. Okay. Yeah. It's a difficult position. It's, I have to say that. Very difficult to play here. And I have to admit that. So king g7 was the last move. And now queen f3 is very strong. But what happens after rook c8? Knight f5 takes, and now you take with the bishop. Okay. If the rook just moves out of the way, then queen g4. Queen g4, this intermediate check. Okay, this is a very complicated position. It's very, very complicated. And now the idea is that if the king retreats, you go queen h5, and mate is unstoppable. This is pretty deep and not easy to see at all. So queen f3 is a great move here, putting pressure on the knight on c6, but also preparing the move of knight f5 check. So a multi-purpose move. So queen f3 is, it's not very easy to spot the move, is very easy, but to actually play it and to be sure about it, that's tough. But I think Kostya can do it. Okay, and in the meantime, let's go over to Zach's board. Ooh, bishop a4. What? Why did he do that? Bishop a4 was played. Why not bishop d8? That's amazing for Zach. Amazing news right now. Bishop a4 is a very serious mistake. And now there's knight c3. Maybe. Knight c3, that's a fork. It's forking everything. And then Zach is better all of a sudden. How can that happen? He only has 2 minutes. And maybe Ivan thought if he takes the rook, then it's too easy for Zach to play this, and this, and maybe he thought here he doesn't have a lot of play, but he has a good position, the bishop pair, this pawn is weak, the king is weak, and he has a huge time advantage. So I think here he would have had great chances to win, but I think he just wants to complicate matters with playing bishop a4, but that's a blunder. That's a very, very bad move. Now there is just knight c3, right? Like knight c3, attacking the queen and attacking the rook, and you're winning an exchange. And rook b8 check is not possible because the king will take, and if bishop takes, then you take the queen with a check, and you're just up a rook here. So this would be very, very good. You just shouldn't take here with the rook, because then there's bishop c6, and this, and this, and this, and checkmate with 2 bishops. But yeah, rook e8 would never happen in this position. But Zach has to play knight c3, and he does just that. That's an amazing move. That's an amazing move. And now Zach is better because he's just winning the exchange. And now we can see bishop a4 has been rewarded a double question mark. And now knight c3. That's an amazing move. I can see that the live board is not... I don't know why it's not... I have no idea why it does that, to be honest. Okay, I will check this one. It's also the same thing, but why? Like, is time slower in Italy than in Germany? I have no idea. It has to be exactly 15 minutes delay. Okay, like this. Okay, I think now it should be good. I think it should be good. So knight c3, that's amazing news for Zach. Amazing, amazing news for Zach. And now he will win an exchange, and he's not even down a pawn because Ivan sacrificed a pawn. And I think this was just the lack of experience for Ivan. He's a very strong player. I can see that just from this game. But he's just a small kid. He's 10 years old. Maybe he's even 9 years old. And that's just crazy that a 10-year-old or maybe even 9-year-old plays so well. But here it was probably this bishop a4 move. That's terrible blunder. You could have just had a great position where you play for 2 results, and I think you would have won after bishop d8, to be honest. But after knight c3, now Zach is back in the game. The biggest enemy right now is his clock. He only has 2 minutes, so basically Zach can not go to the toilet for the next hour or something like that. And if he has to go to the toilet, then he just has a problem. Then he has to decide what's more important for him. And yeah, so I think for him, chess is the most important thing. So, yeah, well, knight c3. Now he's better, and he might be even kind of close to being winning. I didn't think that I would say that Zach is kind of close to winning in this game, especially not on move 21. Like this is looking great all of a sudden. Only thing is just like the time. But because Zach is such a great blitz and bullet player, I think it will be okay for him. But obviously it would be way better if he just had like 20 minutes more on the clock. That would be pretty great, and I would also feel a lot safer for him, because in time trouble it's just so easy to overlook something and just blunder away the position. And his king is not very safe yet. So imagine a rook landing on b1 in the future and bishop on c6. That would already be checkmate. Or imagine a queen landing on b7, also checkmate. Potentially, not in this exact position, but there are a lot of ideas. So the king is not safe. Also, a rook could go to b7 and then a7 is weak. So it's still not clear, but I think we can make some moves here. So the queen is hanging, so you have to play like queen d3. That's the only move. But then there's knight takes b5. Oh, not knight take. Oh no, you just take the bishop. Yeah, he will not be winning in exchange, but he will win 2 pieces for a rook. That's what I wanted to say the whole time. So he takes on a4 and then he takes on d8. And here it's looking very, very well, to be honest. The a6 pawn will probably fall, and that's the biggest asset in white's position right now. So the knight can go to c5, the bishop to c8, and then the bishop can take on a6. Something like this is very possible here. I think once this pawn falls, it will be very hard to hold, because black could trade one pair of rooks and then just advance this pawn at some point at least. And then it will be very hard to hold, because of the thing I said earlier, 2 pieces are way stronger than a pawn and the rook. But now if this pawn disappears, you have 2 pieces and a pawn just for the rook, and that's obviously close to winning. You also have a passed pawn which can just run up the board. So yeah, that would be amazing here. Knight c3 has been played, and now Ivan is taking a think. Okay, if you don't want to play queen d3, there's like no other move basically. Like if you go to f3, then you will just take the rook. Maybe you can also take the bishop actually, but both moves just win material, and here you would be completely winning. So queen d3 should be the only move. Or you might just go for this rook b8 idea, but then you are also down material. So rook b8 is the other move. Maybe that's even the best thing that you can do. So king takes b8, and now you have to take the queen. Oh, you don't have to take the queen. Oh, you can give some kind of check, and then queen c. Oh, this is so complicated. Here, maybe you go bishop f4. No, then king c8. Okay, let's just think for a second here. The queen is hanging. And this queen is hanging. Rook b1. Is it rook b1? Yes. Look at this. What a move. There's a fork on the queen and on the bishop. So a normal person would just move one of the pieces and lose the other. But the engine wants to put another piece on a square which is protected by the knight. So now this is a triple fork. Before it was a double fork, normal fork, but now it's a triple fork. So you're forking yourself basically. But the idea is to give a check. The knight cannot take, because then the knight is not attacking the queen anymore, and this queen will just be hanging, and that will be checkmate in a few turns. So the king probably has to step to the side. And now probably you want to take the queen, you don't want to take the queen. Yeah, because then you will just be down an entire rook. Maybe a piece down. No, a rook down. Okay, if you don't want to do that, then what do you even want to do? Queen e5? Yes. I'm just guessing the moves and I have no idea. And this is, as you can see, such a complicated position. And that's not great for Zach. It would be good if it's just the case that Zach is winning material now and then he can exchange queens. That would just be amazing. But it will not happen, unfortunately, because there are a lot of complications. And I have no idea if Ivan will find rook b8, king b8, and then rook b1. So that's very, very hard. But that is kind of the only thing which is not close to losing. So your queen is hanging, and instead of moving your queen, you sacrifice one rook, king takes, then you sacrifice the other rook, you fork yourself into a triple fork. The king cannot go back because this is checkmate in one. And if the king goes here, then you go queen e5, and the queen is still hanging. You cannot take the rook because then I'll take your queen. And then it will be probably, I don't know what will happen then actually. This should just be winning because the attack, bishop f4, queen c7, will be too strong. So here you have to play like queen c7, and then Zach is better. So the best thing for Ivan is to sacrifice a rook in order to give a check with his other rook while triple forking himself, and everything only to be in a very bad position. And now I think that you have to, it's almost checkmate though, right? Okay, queen c7, this and check. And now the king has no escape, and it has to go to c8, but then it's checkmate. So the king cannot move. So rook d6 will happen, only move. But then there is the rook b7 check, king d8, bishop takes d6. This is still hanging, but now you take the pawn, and you have a pretty strong pass pawn, and you might be able to hold. So this is such a crazy variation, and I doubt that Ivan will see all of that. And he just made a move, queen e5. Oh wait, no, there were more moves. Wait, did he go for all of that? Knight c3? Did he play? He played rook b8. He saw the line. What? That's the right variation. That's crazy that he saw that. Guys, he's 10 years old and this variation is so difficult. Like, I have the engine and it took me 10 minutes to figure out why this is okay. Oh my god. Ivan Kukushkin. What a guy. Queen e5. Everything is hanging. Queen c7 is forced because otherwise the knight would be hanging or it would be checkmate. So, oh my god. Queen c7 has been played. And now Ivan has to take and play bishop f4. But at the end, Zach will be up a piece. And it's very hard to lose the position. And you might also just be winning there at the end. But this is a crazy line that it's very, very impressive that Ivan saw this. Oh my god, that's crazy. And also we have to check on the game of Kostya. So what happened? Queen g7, king g7. And then queen h5 has been played. That has been given a question mark, but it's still a good position for white. He didn't find queen f3, but that was very hard to see to his defense. Then rook h8 happened, great move. Bishop d5, advancing his bishop and threatening some kind of checkmate on f7. But now, oh my god, he took on a4, what? Allowing queen takes f7. Okay, but this is surely just winning. Queen takes f7, king h6, bishop c6. He's getting back the piece. And with interest probably. Because now, on bishop takes c6, there is... How do you exactly play this? I think you go knight f5 check, and then take the bishop. And you can't take the rook because of queen g7, and then somehow it should be mate. I think. Yeah, so this is just mate. Okay, so bishop c6, and now Kostya is winning. Bishop takes c6 has been played, and now all Kostya has to do, I'll go here. All he has to do is play knight f5 and take the bishop with his knight, and then he's completely winning. I think he's so happy right now. Unbelievable. Because he was worse. He was close to losing because he has a Benoni, but a bad Benoni, and not just a bad Benoni, but a Benoni with 3 tempi less. So yeah, that was knight f5 has been played, best move, king g5, and now knight e7 would just win the game on the spot here. And he finds it, knight takes e7, brilliant move, brilliant move. Now it's just completely over. Queen g7 is incoming, and that will be checkmate very shortly. But also the bishop is hanging and you can't defend all of the threats at once. So Kostya played a little bit shaky in the opening, but after that he just completely outplayed his opponent and just played a lot of great moves, and only on move 23 he is completely winning. This was such a weird game. So much happened in only so little moves. So at first it was equal because of the opening, then it was completely not a great position, then it was completely winning, then somehow not anymore, but now it's completely winning. So like this is resignable. Like I'll check the engine. The engine says queen takes e7 is the best move, and that says a lot. The best thing is to just give up the queen, but then you're down a queen. So I think we will see a resignation very shortly. But for right now, we will check on Zach's game, just like Kostya is doing. Kostya is just looking over to Zach's game. So all of those moves happened. Bishop d6, knight a4, and now Zach is up a piece. And that's a very, very important thing And yes, also important is that rook b8 can be met by bishop c8. So the bishop is blocking, and then it's fine. And he has to take the pawn, and then kind of hope that he can create enough activity with his pawn a6. But I think that will not be the case. I think Zach will be able to somehow activate his rook, and then he's just completely winning. So if this rook could teleport across the whole board and to c8, black would be completely winning. And I think Zach can do something like that. Just activate his rook, and then he will just be completely winning. Rook takes a7. Oh no. No, 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 no. Bishop. Oh my god. What? Bishop c8, and now it's completely losing. How? Why? Oh my god. That's not good. That's not good. Bishop e7. Oh, he didn't see. He didn't see. Missed opportunity. He rushed. He rushed again. He was winning, but he didn't see. Oh my god. King e8 only move. Now it's better somehow, but not as bad as it was before. But why? Black is up a piece, okay, but this rook is completely out of play. So maybe bishop d8 was not the right idea. Maybe he had to activate his rook, go rook e8, and then next move play like bishop d7, or maybe next move bishop c8. But he has to activate his rook. So bishop c8 is a passive defending move, but activity is so important, so he has to activate his rook. Okay, so let's check what was winning. I'll turn on the engine to save some time here. Bishop c8 is a blunder because of what? Okay, the idea is to go bishop b4, bishop a5, and then rook a8 to pin the bishop. Okay, this is very hard to see. Okay, you cannot blame him for not seeing that. Yeah, you really can't blame him for not seeing that, but I'll show that on the board. Bishop b4, and now what? If you go, you can't go rook e8 because this will be checkmate, so that's not possible. And what's the idea if you just play any move, like just wait, then you go bishop a5, and then you go rook a8, and then you just push your pawn, and rook b8, the pawn is unstoppable, and it's just completely losing. Okay, I think if he would have spent some time, he could have seen that, but now it's also better for him. Bishop d6 though, not accurate. The bishop wants to go to a5. He goes to d6 though. He's playing a little bit too fast. King d8 back. Okay, this is transposing into this, which would be completely losing. So it's not looking good, but Ivan also is playing very fast. So I'm not sure what exactly he wants to do with playing so fast, because obviously Zach is down on time, but this is a difficult position. You have to calculate here. But now they kind of repeated the position one time, and almost, and now I think he will take some time. And yes, exactly right. He definitely needs some Russian chess coach to tell him to sit on his hands. But that's a great tip. Like, I'm always doing that. if I want to move, but then I see I have a lot of time and I am sure, but I have to really make sure, I'm always sitting on my hands. That's what I'm doing. And that's great, because if you're sitting on your hands, then you can't you can't move because you're sitting on your hands. And that's always just a very great tip. And I think Ivan should do that just for some minutes. Okay, he does not. He plays bishop e7, which is a bad move. He wants to repeat. Maybe Ivan is fine with a draw. Maybe they will just repeat moves here. That would be completely crazy. Like, the variation Ivan played was so complicated, and I didn't think he would find all of that moves, but he did. But then at the end of the variation, he just rushed. He is winning. If Zach repeats and he goes to b4, he is winning. But maybe he's just not really seeing it, because it's not easy at all. He is down a piece. Yes, and they are just repeating. They are just repeating. Bishop d6. Will that make a draw? Now king d8. Is that threefold repetition? Is that threefold? Yes, king d8 would be threefold repetition. So Zach has a draw in this position. On move 29, this was the position. Then on move 31, this was the position. And now, here, if he goes king d8, it's threefold repetition. And Zach knows this. And also we have a move on Kostya's board, and that will be over very soon. But I think we will stay here for Zach. So king d8 would just seal the deal and end the game in a draw. And I know he is very ambitious and he's up a piece right now. And I think he won't do it, but if he doesn't do it, then he's losing probably. Because every single of the other moves is losing. Zach down to almost 30 seconds now, and he has to make a decision. He has to make a decision fast. 27. Yeah, probably yes. Probably Zach thinks that he is winning somehow. He has to play on, but 17 seconds. He's getting nervous. Don't lose on time here. Now he's realizing he has to make a move. He has to do it. King d8. What did he do? He played king d8. Do they agree on a draw? Did he claim a draw? I think now it will just be a draw. Either Zach claims it or Ivan can claim it. But I don't think Zach will do it. I think if we have a draw, then Ivan claims it after bishop e7. Bishop b4 would be still winning if there's not the threefold repetition. So if Ivan finds this, then he's winning if Zach doesn't want the draw. So this is just, I don't know why. Oh my god. I don't understand. King d8. Ivan is sitting at the board, and okay, this is good. Ivan sitting at the board, and Zach did not claim the draw, right? Zach did not claim the draw. So Zach wants to play for a win, but Ivan can claim the draw right now. And also after bishop e7, he can also claim the draw. Good question. If Ivan does a new move, is it too late to claim it? So if you make a completely different move, for example, if you go h3, that's a completely new move, and then if you press the clock, from that point it's too late. So what you can do is you can immediately call the arbiter and claim the draw, or you can write down your move on your score sheet, which would be bishop e7, and then tell your opponent, and then after that the arbiter, that you are claiming threefold draw, threefold repetition draw. You can also do that. But what you cannot do is what actually happened to me in an OTB game just like 2 tournaments ago. You cannot play bishop e7 check and then hit the clock and then after that claim a draw, because if you hit the clock then it's too late to claim the draw. So you have to be careful here. So what is Kostya doing? Kostya's game bishop h1. Oh, sorry. Bishop takes h1 happened, and this would just be checkmate in a very few moves. Queen g7, king h5, knight f5 has been played, bishop f3, and now g4, bishop takes g4, and just now Kostya played queen h6, which is checkmate, and with that he wins the game. He is on 2.5 out of 3 points. The game concludes. He looks very happy, as he should, and it's a very good start for him. So he's gaining some rating. Oh my god. I'm very happy that Kostya won, because he was very he was not very close to losing, but he just had a position which was hard to play. But look at this. Ivan found it, bishop b4. Zach down to 4 seconds. What to do? Why didn't he claim the draw? He made a move with 1 second on the clock. Oh my god. He played f5 with 1 second on the clock. There's no way. 1 second. The move will shortly be played. Look at this. Why didn't he claim the draw? He has to make a move. He played f5 with 1 second on the clock. 1 second. That's crazy. Oh my god. Oh my god, with 1 second on the clock. And after f5 it's completely losing, unfortunately. Now the pawn is just running through. There's bishop a5, rook a8, a7, and there's nothing to do. Oh my god. This is so tough. This is so tough. This is heartbreaking. Like, he had a threefold repetition, but now Ivan spent a little bit of time and now he found it. I don't know how you can play on in such a crazy position, because this pawn is very strong. So yeah, bishop a5 has been played, king e8, and now rook a8, and after that a7 will win the game. That's so sad for Zach. Like, a draw today would have been totally fine. 1 out of 3 is a decent result for the game so far. He would kind of be at 0 rating loss. He also wouldn't gain rating, but I think he wouldn't lose too much. But now he will most likely go on to lose this game, and yeah, then with a half a point out of 3 games, he will definitely lose some rating at least. Still 6 more rounds to go, but this is so hard to recover from. And tomorrow there's a double round, which is not great news for Zach. So tomorrow double round, and rook a8 has been played. King d7 is the only move, and a7, rook b8, the pawn will just run through. Oh my god, this is not great at all. This is not great. And I feel so bad for Zach. Like, yeah, chess is So tough. Rook a8 has been played. Yeah, chess is a hard game. Zach goes king d7. And now a7 is just winning. Zach is completely focused, but Ivan will play a7 and then the game will be over. Yes, he goes a7. And you cannot prevent this pawn from promoting. Zach goes rook e8. Problem is that there's no threat. Rook e1 is no threat, so rook b8. Ivan has to get up to reach for the rook. His arms are too short. That's so sweet. Like, he has to stand up to make the moves on the 8th rank. Rook b8 has been played while standing up. And now the pawn is promoting and there's nothing to do. Maybe the best chance you have is to go bishop b7 and give up your bishop, but then the passed pawn remains, and also the black pawns are very weak, so yeah, this is just heartbreaking. Yeah, it's very tough for Zach. Very tough for Zach. And I'm not sure if he knows that he had a threefold repetition. I'm not sure if he knows that. But it's very brave of Ivan to play on this position when he was down a piece, and also he didn't spend a lot of time. He spent like 5 minutes to find bishop b4, and he just went for it, and now he's completely winning, because Zach is maybe a little bit too ambitious in some cases, at least. Yeah, it's just tough. It's tough. And Zach has no time. Zach played bishop b7 again with 1 second on the clock. And now rook takes b7, rook takes g7, and then it's over. What a game. And what a tough result for Zach. I know the game is not over, but you win this all of the time. There's no way that you don't win here. You can blunder back rank mate, but that will not happen. So yeah, rook takes b7, and then what to do? Now you might consider resigning, because there's just nothing. So king c6 and then even rook b8, and the pawn is promoting. You don't even have to take on g7, because if the king moves, then rook b8 is coming, king d6, and rook b8 have been played, and now you will see Zach resign the game. Rook b8 has been played, and this is so tough for Zach. Zach resigns the game, and oh, look at Ivan. Look at Ivan. He is celebrating. He is celebrating. I've not seen that. That's a little bit disrespectful. So if you're like 5 years older, then you shouldn't do that, because Zach just suffered such a bad loss. But Ivan took the kings, he slammed them into the middle of the board, and then he celebrated. The disrespect is crazy. He celebrated. He went like, yes. Oh my god. But yeah, who can blame him? He's 10 years old. Maybe he's even 9 years old. Yeah. And it's just like so sad for Zach. I have to ask him if he knew that he had a threefold repetition. I don't know that. But yeah, Zach forgot his camera, Zach forgot his score sheet. He's just completely tilted right now. And now the most important thing for him is to just recover from this very, very tough loss. And what makes it even worse is that it's against a 10-year-old kid, and it's not good for your ego if you lose against a 10-year-old. But I know that Zach has played a lot of younger opponents, and yeah, well, it's not the best thing that there is in the world. And also, I think everyone just has a bad score against children. So, yeah, yeah, just very, very tough. And I will just check if. Okay, I think Zach definitely does not want to do post game analysis because I think no one would like to do that. And then with that, I think today we are done here. Kostya wins this game, is on 2.5 out of 3, and can be very happy about his result at least. He made one decision which was a little bit shaky. This knight b5 move didn't make any sense if you look at it, but he missed like one detail, and after that he played very well game and won in only 27 moves, played a brilliant move, and he can be happy, he can be proud. On the other hand, Zach, he had some trouble out of the opening, but then he fought back and he actually was better because Ivan played this bishop a4 move, which was not great, and knight c3 just won material, and it wasn't easy, but it won material. But unfortunately, Zach miscalculated, and then there was this crazy line played by Ivan, and this one moment where Zach went bishop c8. I think that was the most important moment from today. I will just do an instant replay of that real quick. So here in this position, the rook just took on a7, and Zach went back with his bishop to c8. And the idea is to attack the pawn and to restrict white's plan. But the problem is that there's this very strong idea of putting your bishop on a5, and then your rook can never get into the game. You had to play rook e8 and now activate his rook. And now after some move he can go away with his bishop, and now Zach is definitely playing for a win. He can push the pawn, go bishop c4 or bishop d5, and I think here Zach had huge winning chances actually. So this was very important to find this move. Unfortunately, Zach didn't find it. So yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. And I think with that we will conclude this stream.